this, and so now we're learning more. Breaking news, Ottawa's police chief resigning today amid criticism of his inaction against the Freedom Convoy. Critics are accusing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of bringing Marshal Law to Canada as he invokes never-before-used emergency powers to crack down on Freedom Convoy protesters. Under the Emergencies Act, the government is introducing measures that aim to cut off the protesters, cut them off from their money, all the funding. That would include crowdfunding platforms being used to support the blockade. However, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association says the government has not met the standard for invoking the Emergencies Act. And at least 4 Canadian premiers, the equivalent of state governors, you could say, called the plan a dangerous overreach. Canada's Minister of Public Safety, however, is defending this extraordinary measure.
It is not just an inconvenience. It is not simply a matter of a trivial interruption. We've seen intimidation, harassment, and expressions of hate. And at times, the scenes on the streets of Wellington
what do you expect, dude?
have seemed completely lawless.
All right, I want to start again with the breaking news and work our way forward. Kaylee, it is significant that this Ottawa police chief has said he's not going to take action against breaking up that blockade. Look, the Prime Minister had the opening salvo. You want to talk all big and bad and say, well, I'm not bringing in the military just yet. You want to do all that? Then let all your local people sit down, all your LEOs sit down, and you take over and see how popular that makes you around the world.
Yeah, that's an extraordinary development that happened at the last hour of your show. I mean, when you have law enforcement saying, essentially, this is government overreach, I'm resigning in protest, they're exactly right. This Emergencies Act is only supposed to be invoked if there is a threat to the sovereignty of the Canadian government. So you're telling me these peaceful truckers who are opposing government overreach, surrounded by kids and, very family-oriented affairs, that's a threat to the sovereignty of the government of Canada? I don't think so, Justin Trudeau. I don't think so. But what's amazing, they're protesting government overreach. So elitist Justin Trudeau says, what's the answer? More government overreach. Like, how does that even make sense?
I know. That is so, it's ironic that you say that, too. Because not only are they protesting government overreach, but he's not listening to what they're saying. So
I'm watching this conversation. Let me pause it for a second. And I'm wondering if Justin's watching and if he's going to realize that it's going to be the women that take him down.
That not only is overreach, but it doesn't match the situation. So what is his goal here? Right? Because 90% of the truckers union is vaccinated. What is his goal? Like, what is the mandate even about?
Yeah,
I don't even understand that.
The goal is control. I think it's part of our ongoing conversation we've been having about as the rise of the proletariat nation here, the workers coming together, the blue-collar, reasonable, rational, everyday American that works to put food on their table, that is rising up because the governments in charge are being even more bloated with their control. And the second it's questioned, the second it's pushed back, they respond with more control, more mandates. This is the first time, as you said, in Canadian history they have invoked this. This emergency powers, as you said, is reserved for when it's threatening the sovereignty of Canada and when it exceeds the scope of the ability for the provinces to handle it. So you're telling me that World War II, that all of the calamities Canada has undergone in its history, they all pale in comparison to truckers protesting their freedoms. And meanwhile, as you pointed out, the Prime Minister refused to meet with them. He's never heard from their lips what they want, but he took a knee at the Black Lives Matter protest to the scoffing of his community as well, who said this is just performative. Like you've not engaged in one policy that will help in that department too. So all this guy does is tighten the reins on his people and then engage in performative actions.
You know what really stands out to me too, Jason, is how, and Kaylee hit the nail on the head with this too, how peaceful the protests have been. In fact, they wanted to honk their horns, which is something that truckers do when they go down the road. And it's actually kind of cool in the summertime. You got your windows down. It's like, oh, I got a honk from a trucker. Whatever. They don't even want to hear that. And they're arresting people who honk their horns back. Remember the great-grandfather, right? 78-year-old man, they arrested him in Canada because he was honking his little horn back to say, hey, I support you guys. But what really stands out here to me, Jason, is there is no respect for dissent in a democracy. What do we call that kind of government?
Yeah, this is nothing short of martial law. And Harris, to your point, why hasn't Justin Trudeau sat down with some of the truckers and heard out their grievances? I think they're reflective of what a lot of Canadians and quite frankly Americans are feeling about these mandates. They're not against getting vaccinated.
Parents?
They're against the
School
mandate
board?
to have to get
Masking? I mean, that
vaccinated.
sort of thing?
Yeah, and have that sort of discussion, and it's really interesting. The New York Times is even, editorial board has even come out against what Trudeau's doing. They pointed out a good point that I didn't know, that Trudeau supported these types of blockades in India. He was totally fine with it if it was in another country, but now that it's happening in his own backyard, where does this end for him? Where does this end for him? He doesn't have an end point here, and he's going to lose the support of the Canadians. And hey, to our friends to the north, you're the one that put him in power. If you want to see a change, you got to get rid of him.